and then how they stay together, how they exchange value in a community environment, and that's both online and offline. Of late, Ellen has gotten very involved on the entrepreneur side, just like many of us, and she's taken her experience and wisdom to entrepreneurial settings around the world and has worked very closely with many founders and startups, and in fact last night joined us at the Brandery when we were having some fun with another colleague, Rob. The thing that I'm fascinated with Ellen around is her ability. I mean, she really studies anthropology, and she really applies that knowledge to crowds and communities. And with that, she's been very active on the leadership side and culture side, so perfect for us today to facilitate a very esteemed panel. And I'm going to let Ellen introduce our guests, but I want to say I'm grateful for you all for coming, because I think when you're exposed to this kind of thinking and material, you need to work with it a little bit. So be with us to work with it, to make sure we can bring it home even more in an application that we can take back to the office. All right, over to you, Ellen. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy. This is a good microphone. Thank you, very nice. It's such a pleasure to be here, and really excited to spend this time with Rob, Michelle, Stacy, and Chris. And of course with the people at Centrifuge and all of the great things that are happening here in Cincinnati. I'm an Ohio girl. I was actually born in Dayton. And it's been wonderful to come back and also to see this amazing city and all of the potential that is really spreading out before you, kind of like the pearls out there that Wendy showed me at sunrise this morning. So I hope this is the first of many visits, and it's really an honor to be with all of you. Thank you. So, you know, so many things, Ben, that you shared really inspired me, and I know were relevant to this crowd. And I wrote down something that I thought was so interesting as a theme for the conversations, people you're about to meet, and that's the power dynamics have changed. And what are we going to do to adapt, to evolve, and to even outpace the potential as rising stars demand a new type of value proposition from us as employers? And what we really want is for this conversation to give you some insights into how you can use that to create competitive advantage for your companies, and also to continually elevate the value propositions I know you believe in, not only for your businesses, but for this entire region. It's a very exciting time. So with that, what I'd love to do is invite these panelists to do I'd like to say a tweet-length introduction of themselves, a tweet-length mini bio, and then a statement of what they really deeply care about in the future of work. So Rob, do you mind if we start with you?
Sure thing. So my name is Rob Castaneda. I have a Spanish name, but I'm from Sydney, Australia, and live in California, so it's all mixed up. I am the founder and CEO of Service Rocket, which is a software and services company that focuses on customer success, which is doing training and support for other software companies. We have 180 people worldwide in 4 countries, and from the future of work point of view, you know, I can't be in every place every time. So very early on, we focused on, you know, my view is the org chart's upside down, and I'm supporting as many people as I can for them to grow versus trying to control.
Hi everyone, I'm Michelle Joseph, and I'm CEO and founder of People Foundry. We are based in Chicago and Cincinnati native. What we do as an organization is work with executive teams and educate them on the importance of talent, what talent is looking for today, and providing them with the tools so that they can put the right process in place to engage and retain their talent. And then we actually work out in all marketplaces to headhunt, as well as share the opportunities that those employers are providing. And we forge companies with careers. So we help build out those teams.
My name is Stacy Browning. I'm with a local headquartered company called Paycor. We provide payroll, HR, time and attendance services to small and medium-sized companies. And really, until earlier, I thought that reflecting what our clients are telling us, as well as ourselves from a talent perspective, was really why I was here. But I started to get nervous, having been at my company for almost 23 years, that I might be evidence of the old version of work. But fortunately, I've been lucky to be on many tours of duty, and that's why I explain why I've been at the fast-growing Paycor for so many years.
Good morning, I'm Chris Powell. I'm currently on my 7th tour of duty, but all different companies, so I'm the opposite of Stacy in fact. But currently tour of duty is the CEO of Blackbook HR, which is a Cincinnati-based company. We build and develop software solutions to measure and track employee engagement and talent management. And one of the things that I was really interested in the whole future of work, I mean, our primary purpose in what we do is to help organizations win with talent, but at the same time helping the talent find their purpose, be able to understand their impact, and also create community for them as well. So I'm really excited about this topic of the future of work.
So what we're going to do is have an opening question about each of you to answer, and then we'll skip around and see what you wish to contribute. And, an HR lead for a big company that I know said something really interesting one time. She said, you hire an employee and a human being shows up. So as we think about the future of work, I'd love reflections from each of you on that human side of human resources.
Yeah, I think we, internally in our company, we do a lot of blogging, a lot of internal knowledge sharing. So whenever somebody starts, it's actually about the person more than what they're doing. I think it's a very key part of them feeling like they're joining a team versus just taking on a job.
So the human side of human beings, I think that humans want to be told the truth. So I think it's important moving forward with organizations is to set clear expectations. I think that when people are looking for new opportunities and when companies are trying to hire people, they say what they think the other wants to hear rather than telling them the truth, or telling the full truth. And I think you need to take feelings into consideration, whether you're on the employer side or the employee side.
So thinking about the human element, one thing that's really gotten my attention lately, and it might come from a place of self-awareness and how I model behavior, is really to understand that we've all figured out that work is 24/7 and that it's integrated, a lifestyle, all those kind of buzzword phrases. But I do subscribe to this idea that we have an overwhelmed workforce, and I think part of it is being able to set better expectations for people, to say when it's okay to be on and when to be off. But I'm trying to be more cognizant about how do we meet our employees, we call them associates, in an honest conversation, because sometimes we do expect, especially in a service business, that we're always on and responsive, but other times it leads to burnout and maybe might not demonstrate the new kind of trust and flexibility that as a great employer we want to have. So it's one thing that I think about a lot when it comes to the human side.
Humans. I spent, prior to coming to Blackbook HR, I spent 25 years as an HR practitioner, as a human resources practitioner, so studying humans. And one of the things that, to your point, Ellen, that you hire an employee and a human shows up, one of the things that I think, when I think about that is, when people show up, innately, I think everybody wants to be able to contribute to the purpose and the mission or the meaning of the company. They want to be able to have some impact, and they want to be rewarded for the contributions that they do. And oftentimes, we miss that element because what we're looking for is just the output, and we forget all of the energy, the effort and time and energy that goes into creating that output. So, the thing about when I think about humans and I think about what we do and why we're here today, it's really about how do we create environments where people can contribute, have an impact, and be rewarded for their efforts.
that sets up the next question really well, which is about technology and transparency. You know, in a world where every person is a network, they have the ability to amplify any opinion about your company and information about your company out over the internet. They also have the ability to learn things about your company that might have only happened behind closed doors even 5 or 10 years ago. So from a technology perspective, I'd love to hear from the tech people on this panel. How does that change the dynamics as companies move forward? What benefits does it actually create?
Everybody look this way, so I just start. Well, you know, prior to, again, I spent a lot of my time in the media industry working at Scripps, and one of the things that we used to talk about is this transformation from mass communication to one-to-one. No longer does your voice get lost in the mass, you can have a voice of one. And so what technology has allowed is somewhat of the democratization of the workplace and the voice of the individual. So the question that as HR practitioner and business leaders is how do we address that individual value proposition or that voice for that one person, you know, amass the total organization. So it has created some challenges for organizations in what, how do we curate and cultivate those voices to be able to make heads or tails of what we should do in creating different value propositions for different workforces. So one of the things that we've seen in, at least in the tech space, is the ability for organizations now to be able to harness that type of environment and content that comes out of those conversations, but then also finding unique ways to apply that in terms of how you design HR programs and policies and processes to be able to create the alliances that have been talked about. So I think the piece around honest conversations, because you can't hide from the truth. These days it's harder and harder to do that. I remember working at my first employer, which is a large automotive company. You know, you only had one way of communication, and that was from your boss to you. You had no way of really being able to communicate back up. So no longer are we in that one-to-one, we're in kind of like what I call a multifaceted conversation, and technology enables that to happen.
I was going to sort of comment something a little bit more specifically, but on that theme, is that at Paycor we've invested in a social intranet. So what that means is most everybody can post information on maybe quickly, like on a chat or tweet level thing, or maybe a blog post. But even if you have that automation, what really has to happen is the spirit of the company has to come through. Otherwise, it's either flat or just static information. So we try to share as much as we can, and from top down, and sometimes that doesn't go so well because you ask people for their opinion and you go a different direction and they have long-term memories. But other times it's feedback loops and everything. The company just has to make sure it's willing to be able to foster that kind of real open communication. Otherwise, you put things out there and it's actually working against you. Just as an example that doesn't have to do with my company, but my husband's company, he had one of those flat intranet type examples, and here's results, and here's how you get access to different systems so you can work harder. And then all of a sudden, a new leader who was a field person came in and started daily blogging, like, here's what city I was in today, and this is what I did, and this is what I observed. It's like he wakes up and reads that story because he can get more from that authentic look into the company than through some formal scrubbed by HR, PR, an attorney. So I think it comes from the authenticity, and the technology should support it.
But it sounds like you saw that in the company as a real advancement.
Yes, right.
Michelle, how does that change the way we're hiring, the way we're attracting and recruiting employees?
I mean, technology is changing everything, and it's how we tell those stories. So if there's something that an employee has done to truly transform your organization, have those case studies built, tell them openly on your sites, rather than just saying you have a value of innovation. Talk about Katie and how her innovation was applied and how the company embraced it and the end result of what she was able to do with that organization, and how they cultivate that and how they reward it and how they allow other employees to contribute to that sort of platform. That's what millennials are looking for. That's what people who really want to contribute want to see, are others who have been able to do that and knowing that they can take it and take it to the next level.
So Rob, you spend a lot of time in different parts of the world, moving around, a multinational corporation. But what do you notice worldwide in the way that tech is shaping this potential?
I think people are people, and just because someone's in Malaysia or someone's in Sydney or someone's in the US, there's actually a lot of commonality between that, and so the technology stack that we have internally in the company is the same everywhere. So it's not a separate intranet or a separate piece. And some of our biggest contributors are in Malaysia or Chile. So stories are powerful. Real stories are much more powerful. The stories by the team members on the front lines are even more powerful because they're right at the forefront. What we struggled with was we had these monolithic HR systems that we would track, praise, and do things for an employee. We had all these stories that were very fluid and unstructured. And we never had the time to try and marry those things together. So we built the technology integration so that when we wrote these stories in our blogs, we could tag people's names. They automatically get entered into our HR system. So as we're going to do our check-ins, we're going to see when someone was mentioned. Not only that, we have 5 company values, and along with those tags are which values they apply to. So we can actually see which values are being shared in stories and real examples of what's there, which helps when you have new people join the company.
One thing I know from talking to some of you before this conference and certainly learning about centrifuges and startups in Cincy through Eric and Wendy, really listening to Ben and reading The Alliance, which is the book I'm recommending to so many people right now. It's a fantastic book. But there's this tremendous potential for companies to be canvases for great change and really for bringing forward some of the principles that maybe it would be harder now for other organizations to bring in. Some people are saying the right corporations are even more influential on change, positive change on the planet in government agencies or institutions or other sorts of structures. Maybe universities are the only ones that really equal the power of corporations. So if we think about giving this room unfair advantage in driving economic growth and creating value, what about the messages we're sharing here can help this group of people really take the vision for Cincinnati to the next level? Create new forms of change to their corporations. Could you start off?
That org chart upside down is one thing for me, right? And so I can't have all the ideas in my company, and certainly any idea that's forced on me, I rebel against naturally, and that's my mom. That's my wife. So the same kind of thing in the company is that we have resources available, and example, when we're doing our charitable programs, I didn't see it. Let's, as a management team, come up with a foundation and some, force a way for us to do things. The team knows we have money available to help, or time available, and there was flooding in Malaysia, and the team, they got together and put a proposal together, and they owned it and carried it through. There's a lot of initiatives that are grown out of the teams themselves, and so we're trying to foster that thinking of if you feel inside that something needs to be done, you should be able to communicate it and take some action versus turn up and sit in the cage.
Going back to what Ben said around the check-ins, I think that's really important, and I think that organizations should be checking in on a regular basis in the good as well as where companies can improve. And I think if you're able to get that feedback in an open, honest manner, you can do it through confidential, type something up and send it confidentially, you can do it through surveys. But letting everybody know what everybody thinks is powerful and being done well in an organization and sharing that. And then also acknowledging as an organization that you have areas where you can improve and telling them how you're going to take those steps to improve. So you're listening to them and you want to improve for their betterment as employees, you're going to improve your company overall. So make sure that you're doing that on a consistent basis, and it's not surprises. It's something that's done regularly.
So when you asked that question, my mind went more to just best practices in change management, because more and more, and I think this has happened in marketing, it's happened in software development or IT, I think HR is really sort of evolving to be more business and maybe different business metric driven versus maybe a traditional metric like time to hire. And so if you're truly a partner with the business, I think that HR leaders probably need to become more comfortable in affecting change that can affect the individuals. Maybe supporting tours of duty is one example of how to do that. And another thing is to influence policies, like the Adobe person who kind of stumbled into changing policy that probably wouldn't hold up in a change management audit of best practice. But so if you don't have that bold statement to hold you accountable to making change, how do you do it in an organization for business impact that ultimately affects individuals? I think it's a great thing for people to study, whether it's project management or just best practices of getting change champions together or some sort of infrastructure or model to follow. Hey, have we made sure everyone's in the know on something? Have we provided enough data? Because what happens in change is if you're in the middle of a decision, you know what's going on, and you're leaving everyone in the wake while you're already on to the next thing, and they're just hearing about something for the first time. So I tend to call this practice of, we as leaders, a hack. Get good at change management, and I think you can really make a lot of personal or broader impact.
Love that hack word.
Change management, I think one of the things that we talk about inside our company is how do we equip companies to get better with change? And one of the things that we've noticed over the years is looking at that change happens through relationships and networks. And inside of most organizations, most of us have probably tried to look at the org chart and figure out how we're going to facilitate change. But the change actually happens person to person. And so what I think, leveraging all of the technology, the ability to have these open, honest conversations that create stories that can be shared, because at the end of the day, you will change when you understand what's in it for you. And if we're not clear as organizations of communicating what the value is to the individual, it will be very hard for any change initiative to be successful. And I think we should all think about how to leverage the technology and the conversations that can happen using tech to be able to get to that, back from that mass communication around change. Oh, yes, we need to change because we need to grow business by 20%. But how do I break that down into a conversation of what does that mean for me and what do I need to do or what do I have to do differently to evolve and get that change? And we think a lot of the technology and open conversations and feedback tools and social platforms and intranets are a neat way to get at that. But I think we still, as companies, still have a little way to go to be able to adopt those type of tools to be able to facilitate change faster. Because guess what? It's not getting slower, it's not getting easier, it's getting more complicated. So we've got to get better at it.
Well, on that theme, we'll have fun with our last question, but I have a favor to ask you guys. Can I throw you a tiny curveball? It's a little different than what we planned on this. I think it'll be fun. Yes? Your permission? Great.
No.
So when I look at this audience and think about the future that's being built here in Cincinnati, I want us all to travel into the future. I want us to go 10 years out. We're going to have a fun exercise here. So it's 10 years from now. We all get to be back in this room together, and we're celebrating the success and the growth that's been built here in Cincinnati through new thinking about work and the relationships and alliances with the people we work with, the way that our companies have been transformed by these tours of duty, and by people really having these long-term relationships, whether they're employees or advocates, through this thinking. And we get to be back here again 10 years later. We all look the same. We haven't aged a bit. It's awesome.
Can I be 10 pounds lighter?
And Case is here too.
Fuel for boldness.
Here's what we're doing is we're sitting around and we're beginning a conversation with these words. Remember when. And what we're talking about is remember when we did these things that allowed this to happen by elevating all of the best talent and the best impact that could be created, regardless of gender, regardless of ethnic background, race, regardless of gender orientation or sexual choice, regardless of any of these other factors that separate people and often separate workforces at this time. But we've won that, right? We're on the other side of that. So now we get to say, remember when, and talk about a few things we did to make that happen. Who wants to bravely dive in?
10 years from now, I would hope that we don't have to go outside of Cincinnati to find top talent, especially tech talent.
How would you, I'm going to...
More insults.
Remember when we did this, we
Oh.
did that? Remember when we removed or changed or saw?
Okay, somebody else go.
We're not so happy with me after this, right? Let's hear it, Chris.
I'll try it, and you can check me if I'm right or wrong with this one.
Or she will.
Yeah, she will. Remember when we had one size fits all for everybody in terms of our HR strategies to recruit, retain, and develop? And here's what we've learned is we've gone from this mass peanut butter approach to being able to cultivate and attract based on the individual needs of the group's needs to be able to retain, develop, and drive productivity.
I guess I'll go. I'd like to say, remember when it went beyond the HR's responsibility to cultivate and, have everybody live out the culture and the expectations of the organization, and it started to be done by the actual leaders of the organization. It wasn't shoved to a single department to say, you need to do this and make it go throughout our entire organization. And every employee was a part of that adaptation of the business and how that business grows.
Nice.
Okay. Remember when it wasn't okay for our leaders to be wrong? And, for our leaders to hide behind their pieces of paper in their offices, and they had to put on a strong face all the time. And since then, we're allowed to be human at work, share vulnerabilities, and move our organizations forward.
All right, I'll take a second stab. Thank you for that. Remember when it wasn't just a senior few people who understood the reason for our work and the missions, but that we really have found new ways of work that really engage people from a sincere place of trust that goes beyond just a high-level mission statement that doesn't resonate.
How did that feel to you? Was it a thought that this resonated with you, the answers that they shared? So one thing that you all can do is find someone in your organization, maybe try that exercise with them, and use it as a way of mapping a vision for this thing we're all building together here. See what you learn, see what might change. It's a good way to begin. So those are really awesome answers. Thank you. So in our remaining minutes, I'd love to hear from you. Kind of the question I have is these changes we're talking about, is this a cultural evolution or is this a cultural revolution? Which is it? Is it something that we should begin thinking differently again, or starting to beta test or try things? How do you recommend that everyone in this room take on a little bit of it to either evolutionize or revolutionize what they do once they get home?
For us, we're a small company. We have no funding. We are in Palo Alto. We have Facebook on one side and LinkedIn on the other, and Google all around us. And we have to think different about how we appeal to recruit people. And so for us, it's about not creating the Disneyland experience and trying to control the lives of employees and giving them so much. It's about allowing them to live their lives and be part of their communities. So for us, we've had to be different, but I think that's going to be natural. Kind of supply and demand of the market, where I don't care what you provide me, I'm not going to work 80 hours a week because those extra hours are not worth the damage it does to my family, for example. So I can see a combination of both.
Our organization is smaller, it's 25 people, and we're working with high-growth tech and digital firms who need to hire a lot of people. And we believe if you're not evolving with the times, then you're dying. It doesn't necessarily need to be something that's, revolutionary, but you need to listen and you need to adapt and you need to be able to do so quickly. And you need to be able to communicate that effectively to the entire organization so that they know what's going on, so that they can adapt and evolve and have stake in the changes that you're making and understand why you're making them. And it's, again, to better the organization as well as better the employees and their futures, and make them more marketable once they do move on.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think that perhaps it's been a little bit of an evolution, a little slow, and what I sense is the pace accelerating, that it's really needing to be a revolution to really meet people where they are because of the changing demographics in the workplace and so much more that we talked today. It was refreshing today for me to hear that not every manager is comfortable with the conversations that need to happen today, because sometimes I'm not comfortable, and I'm sure we all feel this way. I think it's a call to become comfortable with having different types of conversations at a more rapid pace than we have before.
It's kind of to Stacy's point. I think it's both a bit of an evolution and revolution. In a sense, when I think about the business we're in software, we go against some pretty big giants out there in the marketplace in the engagement space. But one of the things that it's constant for us is always continue to think about evolving not only ourselves, but also evolving our products so that we remain relevant and meaningful in the marketplace. But I think that's the same for each and every one of these companies out here represented in the room today is, how do you remain relevant in the marketplaces that you participate in? And us as individuals, how do we stay relevant? And I think part of that is how do we continue to grow and evolve. But every now and then, there's a revolution that occurs. And technology speeds up those revolutions. And so, I would say there are moments I feel like I'm in a revolution, but it's just faster evolution, it feels like some days. So I'm kind of torn some days. I'm not sure am I involved in it or am I being pushed at the same time. So I think it's really interesting as we think about where we are is, I look at my mom just turned 80 years old and she still works. Not because she has to, but she is continually trying to push herself to learn more and stay relevant with what she does in education. So I'm looking at her as an example. I said, that's evolving, But then at the same time, I think she would say, I've been through a few revolutions because I had to learn how to use a computer. So I mean, it's an interesting question.
I think I heard the answer is, but I think by following the advice that this panel has shared and the great insights, I learned a lot from each of you, so thank you, that we can really find those things that might feel like revolutions from the outside in. We're really creating something evolutionary, not revolutionary, from the inside out. It really shapes it to our own benefit and what we want to accomplish as leaders, as companies, and as people who are building economic value for this region and beyond. So many thanks to all of you. Wendy, you're going to say a few words
I
and
want
we'll
to
do
bring
Q&A.
Ben we've got a few more minutes and just take some questions. We can all stay up and join us if you don't mind. We haven't done that. Are there any questions for Ellen, the panel, Ben? Any specifics? Yeah.
Sure. So reflecting on something, Michelle, that you said a few minutes ago about expanding beyond the silo roles of HR does this, the rest of the business does this. I couldn't agree more that we need to have more cross-pollination. And then I think historically HR as a function has sort of worked within itself, maybe a little bit more than is beneficial for the total organization. So I'm curious, really for anybody up in front of us today, what have you done, what have you seen that's been successful in encouraging people across the business to see HR and people and talent as part of their agenda, regardless of whether or not it's their work plan, it's their title? How will you encourage everybody to see that as a whole?
So we have a talent department. We stick away from the resources word. Because I think culturally it doesn't fit what we're about. But it's similar to the way we structure our business, is that everybody's in marketing, everybody's in sales, and we have custodians getting the result. So we're more of a layered approach. And so that is not my job, is not part of our vocabulary. So that's culture for us.
With smaller organizations that we work with, if the culture isn't coming from the founders and from that exec leadership team, and usually I would say the companies don't necessarily have an HR department that has to do that, and that's part of their job. If they can't communicate it and they're not on the same page and they don't employ that in their day-to-day, we actually turn away and we don't work with them.
I'd love to answer because I work with a couple of companies that are asking the question. There's, of course, the operational side of HR, which is largely, increasingly outsourced, really, especially for rising companies. But the one thing I'm seeing talent development teams do is really push employees constantly to the edge of their comfort zone through new opportunities to contribute. It's very much alliance-driven, but new opportunities to contribute and also ongoing professional development. And Lynda.com comes to mind, recently acquired by LinkedIn, but really helping people always acquire skills as part of their ability to contribute to the company. But I think that idea of really helping people grow by keeping that comfort zone moving is a great way for true talent development and human resources to begin.
Yes, question in the back.
Hi, my name is Elizabeth, and I have a question for Ben. There's been a lot in the press about the imbalance of genders in the technical industry, and I'd love to hear your perspective on, is it a problem or not? And if it is, what you would recommend to address it? Thank you.
I think it's a huge problem, widely acknowledged as such, and I think the solution is highly complex, and I don't think there's one silver bullet. I think the most interesting organization doing work on this subject, to whom I'll defer and point you if you're not familiar with them, I'm sure by the year you know what I'll say, because it's run out of Boulder, called the National Center for Women in Information Technology. And probably the most important insight that they talk about is unconscious bias. And it's not actually like the Ellen Connor Perkins scandal in Silicon Valley the last few months highlights kind of legal blatant discrimination. Of course, that's not acceptable. Why I say it's complex is it's all this subtle, unconscious bias that manifests in hard to describe ways that make the tech industry less accessible for people of certain backgrounds. So it's a slippery concept, how we identify those things and how we effectively train people to overcome those biases to create a maximally inclusive environment. I think that's the project we all have to be embarking on over the long term.
I'll kind of add, we have 40 people that work out of Palo Alto, and we have more women than men in our office. And for us, just as a culture, we just need to be aware of things, right? So tech companies that advertise beer cakes, this is not conducive to great behavior. So I don't drink alcohol. I don't supply that for my staff. On Fridays, I want people to go home. I don't want them to go to the pub. Because if they're not at home or with their kids or with their spouses and community, they're at work. I'm aware of my direct staff what schools their kids go to and when the first day of school is for that district. So I move meetings to allow them to do those kind of things. So I think it's a conscious awareness of your team. And I put that culture at the company, and we attract the right people. So we don't look for anything specific, but I think there's a few things that happen by default in tech that are not conducive to building a great community.
Another question? Yes.
Yeah.
One more.
Hi, my name is Joy Lim. I'm from Procter & Gamble. In this age where everything is growing exponentially, is there any one or two things you've seen, whether it's within your company or in the world, that's truly disrupting the HR or the HR services space that big companies like us could learn from, where we could quickly apply something disruptive and learn from you, and quickly grow our improvement by 10 times, whether it's performance or price-wise?
I'm going to jump in if I can with something I love. It's Slack. Has anyone heard of Slack? Anyone using it? Yeah. Now the thing is Slack is amazing. What it is, it's sort of how to describe it, something between an employee social network and a progress or project management platform. I'm sure other people can describe it better than I can. But one of the things that we have to remember is that these technologies only work as well as the attitudes, cultures, and sort of foundation behind them. You can't pin the tail on the donkey and expect it to work. So there is a company I'm working with, we're really changing the way the employees work together. It's not a real small company, but certainly not as big as P&G, but really through Slack. And one of the things that we've done, for example, is we've made it really comfortable for people to say how they're doing on projects. We have a green, yellow, and red status that everybody has to provide for different projects on a weekly basis, so they're keeping their team and their management apprised of their progress. And there's no shade in yellow. Reds aren't good unless there's an emergency that comes up, but what you don't want is like green, 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 red unless there's some unexpected external force. So the culture of transparency and openness is as much a catalyst or an accelerant of change as any technology on top of it.
I was going to comment, one thing that I tell a lot of people about is that I think there's a lot of learning. So maybe more traditional is a heavy learning management system, and then you're so there's a traditional way as an employee is waiting for development opportunities or going somewhere for a big training course that's quite expensive and travel, and a way a smaller company can encourage employees to tap into new ideas is really through so much online learning, these MOOCs, these massive online courses. And for a smaller company that doesn't have resources, no longer in that developmental conversation do you have to think everything has this huge price tag, and it's even disruptive to the office. So that's something I've encouraged people to look into, either facilitated or online, these MOOCs. I think it's really fascinating.
I've even heard from your companies, just in getting to know both of you. You are the types of companies that are also driving these transformations, not only for certainly for all the employees, but even letting HR think differently about the way they develop those resources.
One thing I'll add, and then we'll wrap up because that's the last question, but thank you for kind of staying with this panel. So one of the things I've noticed in my own leadership style, being exposed in Silicon Valley to a fast growth startup, is individuals, when you're having your Monday meetings, the gathering that you do, not just with your executive team, but maybe the whole company, is that I would get people to stand up, right? I think it's really important. The whole concept of Agile is that there are stand-ups, and they go very fast, right? And so people they already know what their directions are. I mean, that's been agreed in another setting. But on Monday mornings and Friday afternoons, I think to stand up and say, okay, for this week, what are the highlights that you want to get done? Because we want to support you at the end of the week, right? And not allowing people to sit and kind of get into what I refer to as the story of their work. Because no one wants to hear the story of the work. Everyone knows the direction, for the most part. They don't, shame on us as leaders. They know the direction. They have a couple of things they want to get done. But if you can get people in that pace or that cadence, like an Agile software development, I think it's kind of cool. So you might want to try that. Instead of coming in the meetings, all sitting down, looking at each other, like just get it done really fast. And that gives people energy back, not just to go have fun, but to get their work done. And then they train themselves. They'll start self-correcting. Oh, I'm getting into the story of work. And again, individually, maybe you want to know the story, but I would keep it fast-paced. I think that's what we all need. We just kind of get kind of down with it, right? When I keep it up and light and fast, I think it helps. That's my suggestion. So thank you all for your questions. Panelists, round of applause for I'm going to wrap it up. We at Centrifuge feel strongly about beginning and ending on time. It's one of our, I don't know if it's a value, but we're just crazy like that. So a couple of things, and thank you again so much. So a few things to consider. This is a very important tour of duty for me as a professional. When I say this, I mean being in our region. So I want you to know and to lean into us and to me about what we can do and what I can do to help the region move up and out, to think differently, to attract new talent to the region, new startups to the region, to help our civic leaders, our business leaders, our political leaders think differently. I'm your girl, and I want you to lean into me so I can do that, because I feel I'm like a little butterfly in a cocoon now, and I feel like I'm coming out more and more every day because I see the patterns that we have here. But let us all lead together, but in specific, give me some actions and I will be your voice and your spokesperson relative to the city, the community, and our political leaders. I'm excited about that, very excited. So I want to just start there. Then for you, you had so many other places you could have been today. You made a conscious choice to be with the community of your peers at this very cool innovation center, and I want to thank you for that choice. We're all making choices every day about how we spend our time, how we invest our energy and our talent. So as a result of today, there are 3 things actions I hope you can take. One is to reflect a little bit. We don't do that enough. Just to reflect a little bit. You don't have to go meditate for an hour. Just reflect on what you learned and how it's settled. That's number 1. Number 2, please go share with others, either inside your company or around in your community. Share what you are thinking about this, because the momentum is important here, not just on behalf of Startup Cincy, but on behalf of all of us who invest time at work. So share. And then the last thing is engage. Engage your peers, either in HR or your executive peers. Engage them in this concept. So that's different from just sharing. Like, have a conversation one-on-one, maybe a difficult conversation, to see what they think about it, right? So those are the 3 things. So it's reflect, share, and engage. And then know that we will be coming back together often with more unexpected value, just like you had today with Ben, and with Ellen, and with Rob, and Stacy, and Chris, and Michelle. That's our job, being maximalists on behalf of the region. So thank you very much, and we'll see you very soon.